How is everyone doing? We're going to have a live class about reported speech. Now, the situation is I had a filter that would mirror my screen. And so I did all of this work cutting out pieces of paper to use for the live class. But Instagram removed the filter that I used, and they have no other integrated way to flip your screen. So we're going to just do this in a different way, and I'll get us started. Thank you for wishing me a happy International Women's Day. I feel that it helps to learn this sort of topic visually, so unfortunately we won't have that, but that's okay. So when it comes to reported speech, we have direct speech. This is like the person directly says something. So for example, you could say, I enjoy learning languages. If someone says, I enjoy learning languages, this is direct speech. This directly came out of the person's mouth. That is direct speech. Reported speech refers to when you quote someone later on. So, she said, for example. Can anyone tell me how would it be if you put this sentence into reported speech? Instead of directly saying, I enjoy learning languages, to say, she said. And maybe I can write backwards. In the past, on the English classes, I used to write backwards. I don't know if anyone remembers that. She said that she enjoys learning languages. She said that she enjoys learning languages. Exactly. And so here, when we're going to use indirect or reported speech, it's not necessary in English to use the word that. You can just say she said she enjoys learning languages, or she said that she enjoys learning languages. We have two options. We can say she said that she enjoys learning languages, or she said that she enjoyed learning languages. Both of these actually are correct, but there's a difference. If I say she said that she enjoyed learning languages in the past, that is not specific. It means that possibly she continues to enjoy learning languages, or possibly she does not enjoy learning languages anymore. So it's not really clear. It could be that she still enjoys learning languages, or that she does not anymore. If we have the verb in the present tense, this means that definitely she still enjoys learning languages. So that's an important thing to remember in English. So when you're giving reported speech, you can say she said that she enjoyed. If maybe I don't know if it's still true or not, I'll say it in the past. But if I'm certain that it's true, I can also say she said she enjoys. So that's another option. All right, I had here some different questions related to reported speech. For example, imagine that you have a friend who tells you a bunch of lies. So this friend tells you a bunch of lies about his or her life. This friend tells you, I'm a billionaire. They say, I speak fluent French and I have a dog. Later on, you find out that everything that this friend said was a lie. Everything that this friend said was a lie. I want you to tell me, how would you confront this person using reported speech? So for example, a friend tells you, and I'll write here in the chat, a friend tells you, I'm a billionaire. A friend tells you, I'm a billionaire. And then later, you go to the friend's house and you discover this friend is not a billionaire. It would be very common in English to maybe confront this person or expose them or call them out saying, I thought you said... So does anyone have an idea? How could you use reported speech to confront your friend? Yesterday they said, oh, I'm a billionaire. You should come to my house. Today you come to this person's house. Exactly. You would say, I thought you said you were a billionaire. Yeah. So this, if you're like, great, reported speech is interesting, but I have no idea when to use it. This would be a common situation when you can use it. So I thought you said you were a billionaire. I thought you said you were a billionaire. Another example. Imagine that your friend said, I speak fluent French. I speak fluent French. So if your friend tells you, I speak fluent French, then you go to France and you're trying to find your way to the hotel, and your friend, you're like, well, you speak fluent French, so go ask for directions. Help us out. Help us find the way. And then you discover that your friend does not speak fluent French. What could you say in this case as reported speech to call your friend out? Also, I'm seeing that you guys said he told me he was a billionaire. Exactly. What reason? I would say, what is the reason that you said you were a billionaire? What is the reason that you said you are a billionaire? Or why is more common. Why did you say you were a billionaire? Why did you say you were a billionaire? Yeah, didn't you say, this is a good one, didn't you say you were fluent in French? But remember to say in the present, like don't conjugate say because you have didn't there in the past. So, didn't you say you were fluent in French? Exactly. So this is how you could reference what someone said in the past. Didn't you say you were fluent in French? What about, for example, in the case that a friend tells you, I have a dog. Yeah, in this case, you could say, you told me you speak French, but it's not true. Yeah. And with reported speech, it's correct to say, you told me you speak French because it continues to be true. Or you told me you spoke French. You told me you spoke French emphasizes more the fact that someone said it in the past and it's not true. So you could say, didn't you say you were a billionaire and fluent in French? Who are you? I don't even know you. All right. And so the other one, I said, if your friend tells you that they have a dog, and then you go to this friend's house, you could be like, didn't you say that you have a dog? Or, I thought you said you had a dog. This is a good example. So I want all of you to think of an example of a situation where someone lied to you about something and you confront them. Yeah, I would say, why did you lie a lot? Or why do you lie a lot? Because if this person continues to lie. So I want all of you guys to think of an example of someone lying to you and you confront this person, what would you say? For example, I thought you said you had a dog. I thought you said you were a billionaire. Yeah, bloody Instagram. I thought you said you were a billionaire. Does anyone have another example? If it's funny, extra points. I thought you said you were my brother. Who are you? I thought you said you would visit us today. Yeah. If you think of a person in your life who lies. And remember, if you use the phrase didn't, you need to say, didn't you say? Didn't you say? Didn't you say you had a foray? I thought you were the love of my life, but you're not. I thought you... Okay, this one, I thought you were smart, because if you do not believe this anymore, this is a past idea that you had. It's better to say, I thought you were smart. Not, I thought you are smart. So you need to change the verb to the past if it's something that you thought in the past and don't think anymore. I thought you said you had visited China last year. This is a good example because we're going to use the past perfect when someone told you something in the past and you need to say it further into the past. So this is a good example. I thought you said you loved me. I thought you said you were a comedian, but your jokes aren't funny. That's a good example. Another interesting thing about reported speech is that because we need to change the verb into the past tense, what is the past tense of will? So when we're talking about a future action, if someone says, yesterday, someone said, I will help you. Imagine that yesterday, someone told you, yeah, I will help you tomorrow. And then, today is the day, and you're like, hello, where are you? You told me that you would help me. Exactly. So the past of will, when we're using it in this way, in reported speech, we're going to use the word would. So the word would has different meanings in English, but in this case, it's one case where we use would. When something is when we're talking about the future, but in a past way. I thought you said you would help me. Exactly. I thought you said you would help me. Or imagine that you're at work and someone's like, hey, Maggie, go clean the office. I could say, oh, Bob said he would do it. Bob said he would do it. So we're going to use the word would when it comes to, we're going to use the word would when it comes to giving a future sentence, but in the past. And I have another prompt here. So imagine that someone told you they would help you today, but they didn't. What could you say to them? So I thought you would go to the party, right? I thought you would... What is an example? I thought you would... Or maybe you said you would. So this is if you are learning English more in chunks, like in phrases, this is a good phrase to remember. So whenever you're confronting someone because they didn't help you or didn't follow through with what they said. You said you would, or I thought you'd do it. Exactly. You said you would help. You said you would do it. Are would and going to interchangeable? Yeah, it can be also for promises. Like, you said you were going to help me. Remember, if you're using going to in reported speech to put the verb to be in the past, you said you were going to do it. But I would say it's similar in the case that, like, going to versus will, how going to is more common, or the emphasis is more like plans, versus will is a little bit more common in other contexts like volunteering to help. Again, I mean, I could say, you said you would help me, or you said you were going to help me. We're going to has more emphasis, like it was your plan to help me, and would is like you maybe didn't really have the idea yourself, but you volunteered to do it. If that makes sense, like it has the same slightly different feeling that will and going to have in the regular future tense, if that makes sense. I thought you would go to the mall with me today. Katie said she would practice English later. Exactly. I thought you told me learning English wouldn't be hard. Yes, this is a good example. So if someone lied to you also. Is there a difference between she said you would come or she said she was gonna come? She said she would come. She said she was gonna come. I would say, yeah. So she said there's no difference in terms of literal meaning, but there's a difference in tone. She said she was gonna come is like she said it was her plan to come. She said she would come is like maybe I said, please come, or she like volunteered. It has more of an emotional aspect to it, maybe like a promise, or telling someone like, yeah, I'll do it for you, versus she said she was gonna come is more like she had the plan to come. So it's not different in the meaning, but the tone is a little bit different. If it's more emotional, like, you told her it would really be great if you came and I would love for you to be there. It might make more sense to say she said she would come. And if you're just saying it was her plan to, without that emotional part, it might be more common to say you said you were gonna come. Is practice a verb or practice? That's a good question. So practice with the C is the verb in United States and Canadian. Actually, I don't know in Canadian English which one they use, but in the United States it's with a C. With British English, it's with an S. So yeah, in United States, we never use with an S for verb or noun. We use with a C for both. In British English, they use with an S as a verb and with a C as a noun. And you can see that there are multiple verbs with where that's the case. It's a C or a Z in the United States, and they prefer to use an S for everything in British English. I thought you would give me a ride to school today. Yeah. Yeah, if you've learned that practice with the C as a noun, probably you learned British English, or the person that was teaching you British English. I wouldn't say either British or American English is the best. For me, it depends on where you live, and if you want to work in British, like in a country where they speak British English, maybe like in the UK or India also, they use more like the British English. If you're planning to work in the US or Canada or Mexico, or to be honest, in most of Latin America, what I've seen is it's more common US English and US English spelling. So I would recommend that unless you work with British clients. She said she would come to the class, but she didn't. Exactly. Nice. Okay, so these are good examples. Remember to use would not only in the case of, oh, you decided to learn American English because of me. If you change your mind, I can use my fake British accent. I'm just kidding. Yeah, I mean, I think probably a lot of people in India also learn US English. It's just that from what I've seen in the communication and the spelling, it seems more common that people in the work culture use British spelling and like a way of writing, if that makes sense. But I would choose which one you like better. Also, I speak US English, but I have no problem communicating with people in British English. I used to have coworkers. I've had coworkers that spoke British English, and I would just write the way that I write and communicate in American English, and they would understand me. And the same, they would say things that I don't particularly use, but we understand each other, if that makes sense. Okay. So I have one more question related to reported speech, and then I'm going to open for you guys to do other questions because we haven't had a live in a couple weeks, so I want you to be able to ask other things. Also, this live was weird because of my technical problems, so we're gonna change. We have to be able to adapt. So I want you to tell me, the plumber told me he would come the next day. Nice, exactly. Yeah, I think honestly I have a US accent, but I try to watch some content in British and Australian English to be able to understand everyone. Think of a story that you have seen on social media or on the news, and tell us about it. You can use a phrase, for example, like mention, because when we're doing reported speech, if you feel like you already understand it pretty well, there are a lot of other verbs that you can use in reported speech that you might want to incorporate into your vocabulary. So obviously we can say said or told, but we could also use mention to state something, to claim. I'm going to write them all here because that's my only option. To admit, to suggest, to announce, report, insist, confirm, warn, promise, assure, and argue. Okay, so these are a bunch of verbs that you can use when it comes to reported speech. So if you're new to reported speech, it's perfectly fine to use to say or tell. He told me he would come. He said that he would come, for example. But if you want to expand your vocabulary, I recommend trying other words. And if you want real life examples for reported speech, a really good place to go is news articles. news articles use a lot of reported speech. The president claimed that the opposition was incorrect. The bank confirmed that Selena Gomez mentioned that she would release a new album soon. Yes, this is an excellent example. Exactly. That's an excellent example. The Environmental Protection Agency warned that we would see a climate disaster by the year of 2050, for example. That one was a little bit depressing, but you get my point. Yeah, so thinking of news stories that you've seen recently, you could say, for example, there's a case in the US that's really sad of 4 university students that were killed. So you could say the police reported that they had new evidence related to the case of the Idaho 4. I think it's Idaho 4, yeah. If you guys have seen that case, it's very sad. The business owner insisted that he hadn't known about the money laundering scheme that was happening in his business. She promised she would help, assured me it was easy, and warned I should prepare. Warned I should be prepared, or I should prepare. Both of those would work. She admitted that she didn't speak French, I would say. Yeah, she admitted that she didn't speak French. So, again, if you are someone who is not really sure about how to use this in your real life, I think that it would make a lot of sense to look for news articles. This is a very common place where they use this. So I'll write some examples. The police reported that they had found new evidence. The lawyer insisted that his client would not speak to the press. He admitted that he had forgotten to call her back. That's a really good example. Yeah. Maybe the president assured the people that they had nothing to worry about. The President of America blamed the Ukraine, blamed them for being guilty that the war hasn't ended yet. Yeah. The President of America blamed the Ukraine for being guilty that the war hasn't ended yet. Exactly. And you could say for being guilty, or I think in a news article, it would be more common for a less emotional word, like that they were responsible or they were at fault So those phrases tend to be used more in like a news situation. Trump promised he would impose tariffs on Canada and Mexico. Exactly. The couple confirmed that they indeed got engaged. Yeah, she suggested that she wouldn't go to the meeting. Nice. These are all good examples. Yeah. I really like the one, it's a really good word to use, claim, when someone says something and it's more like their opinion and there's not evidence yet. So, for example, it could be like the congresswoman claimed that the election was unfair, for example. The congresswoman claimed that the election was unfair. When we use this word claim, it's used in a way where there's not really yet any confirmation or evidence. It's like, according to this person, they're saying this. She warned him she would leave him if he doesn't change his attitude. I would say if he didn't change his attitude. Sounds more natural. She warned him she would leave him if he didn't change his attitude. Yeah. Even if it's like ongoing, like he needs to change his attitude now, because it's reported speech and you're saying, you're emphasizing what she said in the past, it would sound more natural to say it that way. Today, do you guys know each other? Today, the primary school, you could say that today the primary school announced they would be playing games or something like that. A good way to think about it, if you're not sure how to use reported speech, is think of the direct quote first. Like, literally, what did this person say? And then you can convert it into reported speech, if that is easier for you. Hello. Hi, Charlie. Okay. So yeah, that was my main point about reported speech. I would say for all of you, it could be a good exercise to read a news article. I posted about this on TikTok recently, but there is a website called Engu, and they, on this website, share like news articles at different levels in English, and they take news stories and make them a little bit shorter, less intense, but you can find between like beginner to advanced levels. When someone says, she was like, I enjoy languages. She was like, I enjoy yeah, in that case, it's in a way, if someone says it in the sense of like, she was like, I enjoy languages. That's actually direct speech. Because if you're writing that, you would use quotation marks. So if you say, she was like, and then say what the person said, normally native speakers use that a lot when we're telling a story and repeating exactly what the person said. Otherwise, like she said or she told would be more common if you're kind of just saying the information that was told to you. But if you are repeating like a verbatim quote, I would use she was like or he was like. We tend to use with direct speech, if that makes sense. Trump claimed that the Haitian people ate dogs in Ohio, but it wasn't true. Yeah, exactly. Remember to include it, but it wasn't true. Nice. So I'm going to open it up because I had the crazy situation today with the technology, I'm going to open it up for questions. I can stay on for another half hour. So if you have any questions related to reported speech or a different topic, feel free to write them in the chat. And if there are any that I feel like I can answer, I will give you an answer. So I'll probably prioritize the ones that I have a better response for, but I'm going to open it up for questions. So if anyone has questions about reported speech, what we talked about today, or about any other topic in English, please let me know and feel free to write it. Yeah, I'm from the United States. I'm from Washington, D.C. And now I live in Chile in South America, but I've lived here for 4 years. The winning party in Germany assured they wouldn't work together with the far right, even racist party, which unfortunately a lot of people voted. Which unfortunately a lot of people voted for. So when you have a party, like a political party, I would say, which unfortunately a lot of people voted for. Yeah, exactly. And good use of the word assured. I think that kind of context, like political situations, is a good situation when you can use that structure. Nice. I think we can see similar stories in a lot of countries. Okay, a difference between it was raining when I left my house and it had been raining when I left my house. I would say it was raining when I left my house would definitely mean that at the time that I left my house, rain was there. It had been raining when I left my house is less specific. It's possible that it had been raining before, and by the moment that you left your house, it was not raining anymore. So the first one, 100%, I understand that you're outside and it's raining at the same time. It had been raining. It's not as clear. It could have stopped by the time that you left. And normally in English, when we use the past perfect like that, it's in order to show that something had stopped and really emphasize the order or sequence of actions. So I would personally use it more in the case to say that it's not happening anymore. But you might see people using it still, that it's still happening, but the more common would be the first one if it's raining at the time that you're leaving your house. So the importance of conditionals. I think conditionals are definitely important. It depends on the type of conditional. So if you're saying something like, I would say for sure the zero and first conditional. If I say like, when it rains, the grass gets wet, for example. That would be really common when you're talking about things that are always true or facts. That kind of conditional would be very common to hear in spoken English, as well as the first conditional. If you sleep well tonight, you will get a good night's sleep. That will be used for cause and effect a lot, as well as let me think, what else? Promises. If you do your homework on time, I will give you a toy, son. You probably use the first and the zero and first conditional without realizing it. So those two are super common. The second conditional, you can definitely use a lot in conversation. I would say that's one that a lot of my students use will instead of would, and I end up correcting them a lot. That one would be used if you're giving someone advice. If I were you, I would do this differently. Or to say about like alternate realities, like, oh, I would go to your party, but I'm feeling sick. Yeah, I would say the second conditional definitely also in everyday life. Not if your English only consists of you going to stores and interacting in like a very transactional situation, but if you have friends where you talk about wanting to do something but you can't, not having enough money, wishing that there was a different political situation, all of those sort of situations that come up when you're talking to friends in a normal way about your opinions, you're gonna probably use the second conditional as well. I would say the third conditional, it happens to me as well that I'll correct a student and say, oh no, actually there you have to use the third conditional. It's more specific. It's like if you're talking about hypothetical situations in the past, which is not going to be as common as the other situations. I'll have a job interview for an internship in a language school. Oh my goodness, good luck. You're gonna do great. Is the job interview in English? Also, thank you, Dagika. Let me see. These type of content is so useful. It's easier to learn through patterns, I think. Yeah, of course, you're welcome. I'm glad that it was helpful for you. I feel my live classes often end up being very challenging by accident. I think because as a teacher, I try to push people into the unknown zone because a lot of us on social media, we scroll and we stay in a passive form of learning. And so it kind of, you're not always going to understand everything at the same time that you're first learning it. But sometimes if someone kind of splashes water on you, you're able to learn a little faster. Which topic should a person focus on in grammar and vocabulary if they want to make longer, more complicated sentences? Yeah, let me think about that. So when it comes to longer, more complicated sentences, one topic, which someone asked me actually about this, one topic that I think helps a lot if you want to speak in a more complex way is relative clauses. So instead of saying something like, I met that man, you could say, I met that man who worked for my father, or I met that man who sent me an email, which I read earlier this morning. So when you add relative clauses to sentences, this is one way to, instead of only adding an adjective to describe a person or an object, you can add an entire clause, and this gives more specific information. Another really good advanced sentence structure that comes up for a more advanced English is called inversion. If you haven't heard this before, I recommend that you look it up. Inversion. So, for example, a normal sentence. Well, let me just give an example of inversion. So, I could say something and then say, having studied all night. Like, this is inversion. It's when we basically, like, flip the order of a sentence and it sounds a lot more formal and complex. So, having studied all night. The child fell asleep on the floor. This is inversion. This is an advanced structure. If you're like, ooh, I'm not advanced, that's okay. You can ignore inversion and focus on a normal sentence order. But inversion is when we start the sentence often with a verb or something that doesn't normally go at the beginning of a sentence. You can also see it with the third conditional. So I would have called you earlier if I had known. Put at the beginning, had I known, I would have called you earlier. So you can see a weird, complex, formal sentence structure happen with inversion. Another advanced topic that comes up if you want a more advanced sentence structure is when you're talking about conditions, but not necessarily only the conditionals. So things like as long as, or otherwise, or these sort of phrases, I find that is also a more complex sentence structure. So like when you're giving someone conditions for something, as long as you don't go there tomorrow, everything will be fine. Otherwise, there will be many problems. So that's another topic. Your name is Danny. Okay, nice. Yeah, I would say the second and third conditional are hypothetical situations. The second conditional is like, if I can change something about my present reality, there could be a different future outcome. If I had more money now, I would be able to invest it. The third conditional is something that's impossible because you're thinking of changing the past for a different present. So if we hadn't gone to war, there would have been fewer tragedies, something that you can't change at all because it happened in the past. It's in German, but I'll have to be able to speak English. Ooh, nice. Awesome. I'll think if I have any phrases to use. But yeah, that would be a really great opportunity. I think any of you guys that are able to get into an English speaking job, that's really the best way to make yourself interact more with the language. So I highly recommend, even if you're like, ooh, I'm kind of scared, I think that's a really good way to improve faster than you've ever seen before, is if you're in a context where you're forced to use the language. Also, yeah, no, I don't have any, exactly, you could say, never have I seen such beauty. Exactly. This is another, advanced, it looks confusing, because you're like, this is not, the normal word order in English, but it is correct. It's just something called inversion. Not if you have social anxiety. I would say I have gone through the social anxiety thing when someone asked me this yesterday on TikTok. They were like, how was it easy for you to learn Spanish? And my response was that getting through the basic levels was, I wouldn't say easy for me, but I did it relatively quickly just because I was very motivated and consumed a lot of content. And then once I got to the intermediate level, and then after the pandemic and coming to live in Chile and having experienced a lot of social isolation, I feel like it was really difficult for me in a way to try to improve and be more advanced and to speak fluidly without questioning myself a lot. And I would say that's part of why I always have advice for people about trying to I don't know, like there's something that happens internally when you go from really being self-conscious all the time with the language and limiting yourself to kind of letting go of those personal limitations and letting it flow. I feel like I've felt that for myself, and it might not make sense for someone else to tell you how it feels, but for me, like not even just acquiring the language in terms of grammar and vocabulary, also letting go of mental barriers was probably one of the biggest, most exponential improvements that I saw in language learning. And so I think for that reason, especially for adults, a lot of it is very psychological, and a lot of the limitations that we have are self-imposed, because in our education system, we kind of learn what not to do. We're graded in a specific way. There's always one right answer. We don't want to make errors. We're really hard on ourselves. And all of these are things that are kind of the opposite of what works in language learning. So I don't think it's any of our fault for feeling that way, but I would say, especially if you're someone who does experience anxiety and language anxiety, that's really real, but it's also gonna come from you in a sense. Like, I wish I could show everyone kind of like what I went through with my anxiety and have you like see it and understand it, but I think it's a very personal journey, but it's also really worth it because you'll see that play out in other parts of your life, not only with language learning, but also just letting go and being yourself in general. And the more you resist and don't go for opportunities, the scarier it will feel when you finally do step out of your comfort zone. And I get it. I mean, like, a lot of us are scared of, I think in the past, I would really just feel like my mind had gone blank completely when I would try to speak to people. Like, I didn't have the words in the moment. And I think with time and maybe like just trying to imitate people and let go of like being so attached to my own ideas and trying to have more fun, trying to like the way that I sounded, even though I felt like I didn't. All of these things, I think, helped to be able to change the way that I felt in the moment of speaking. But yeah, that's something for a long time that I've been trying to put into words, because it's more of a feeling than anything else. So, yeah, I've been trying to be able to phrase that so that it's understandable. I think there are people that are like, oh, I know what you're talking about, because maybe they experienced something in the same way. But I think for other people, maybe they're like, I don't really get. It's like when people say, think in English, don't think in your native language. I completely agree with that, but I think people are not good at explaining it. So I think it's something, yeah, that I kind of have tried to put into words. Yeah, exactly. And honestly, the only way out is through. I'll write this phrase here. The only way out is through. For me, this means that you're like stuck in the middle of a forest. You've already decided to learn English, and now you're in the middle of a forest. It's like, how can you get out to the other side and be able to speak English the way that you want to? You could stay in the middle of the forest because you're too scared to go further into the woods. But eventually, if you want to get to the other side, you have to go through. You have to go through the forest. Also, yeah, if I learned Spanish in Chile, you learned two languages. Exactly. Also, am I reading any book right now? Actually, I'm reading two books. One is, because I left two books in my friend's, house in Chicago. One is Atlas of the Heart by Brene Brown, which is about the psychology of emotions. Atlas of the Heart. If any of you guys are interested in that sort of topic, like psychology, emotions, shame, for me, working on myself and like self-discovery was really hand in hand with learning a language, learning Spanish. I feel like they really coincided. So the other book I have actually here, I've been reading. It's like a book about how to read and write in German. So not really this, I haven't really been reading in the sense of like a novel, but this book is interesting because they teach kind of some grammar tips and then they go into like some short texts in German. And so I've gotten started with this book as well. But yeah, I think I was excited because those are the books that I left at my friend's house and then they returned them to me. How to pronounce the AE sound. Oh, wait, I don't remember that phonetic symbol. Could you write a word for me with that, that includes that sound? Because I don't remember off the top of my head which vowel sound that phonetic symbol is. Do you prefer to read in English or in Spanish? I prefer to read. I get more connected. It's interesting. It feels different for me. It feels more like I'm emotionally connected to the book when I read in English. Because I don't really pay attention as much to the language itself. I kind of just absorb the meaning of the words, of the complete sentences, complete ideas. I kind of like feel more when I'm reading. When it comes to Spanish, I like reading, I like discovering new words. I pay more attention to the language itself, the use of language, the structure. So I feel like there's more of a distance when I'm reading in Spanish, if that makes sense. So yeah, in that sense, if it's more to like read to let go and enjoy a novel, I would say I prefer to read in English. But it's not that I don't like to read in Spanish, it just feels different. Yeah, I'm still working on my German. I had the summer holiday off of the classes, but okay, perfect. I had the summer holiday off from the classes, but we're going back. And I've been learning a lot of the declination where it's like, eine, einen, eines. So that has been a big headache for me, recently in German. I don't know if any of you guys have any tips for reading that. Yeah, I think probably a lot of us feel that way with reading in your native language versus reading in a different language. It happens also, sometimes my students will ask me like, what does this phrase mean? And they're thinking of it in a very literal way. And I'm like, oh, that's funny. I never thought about word for word this phrase. I only thought of the entire idea. Okay. Cat, cap. This is the sound like apple. Cat, cap. Mad, lad, bad, I would say it's almost, so Spanish speakers say manzana, ah. But that, in English, it's different. The A sound is not like manzana. It's like ah, 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 ah. It's further back in the mouth. Ah. It's almost like if you feel very refreshed and relaxed. Ah. Ah. Or if you feel scared. Ah. So kind of like a combination of the two. I would recommend to say this sound in a bunch of different words when it's at the beginning, middle, and end. And that way you can practice it in a variety of ways. That's like usually for me the biggest pronunciation tip. Sad, bad, cat, apple, Chad, dad. Yeah, probably a lot of you guys know the word dad. Dad. Ah. We have yeah. It's like the vowel sound in the front of the mouth at the bottom. Ah. Yeah. Yeah. It's also like yeah, dad, cat, cap. I don't know if me just repeating it a lot of times is helpful to anyone, but ah. Where's my tongue? Ah. The tongue is down. Ah. Cap. Cap. Cup. So the difference is ah is in the front. Cap. Cup. Cup. The tongue kind of goes back a little bit. Cap. Cup. Cup. Cap. Cup. Apple. Up. Dad. Mud. Those words don't make any sense. Cap. Cup. That's more like you're getting punched in the stomach. So you're like, ah, up, cup. It's more like getting punched in the stomach. Cap, cup, cat, cut. Yeah. Ich liebe es, wenn du Deutsch... Okay, wait. Ich liebe es, wenn du Deutsch sprichst. Das ist sehr schön. Yeah, for me, the vowels are hard. Yeah, I would say related to just stress, I think I have a tendency sometimes to like spread myself too thin, trying to do too many things at the same time. And I also think I think it's something that I need to work on, like organization and focus and not getting burnt out, because then I feel like it takes an emotional toll on me as well. I also think I have a tendency to like absorb a lot of what people do and say, and so sometimes like a lot of interaction online can be kind of intense as well. So I think it was good for me to kind of take a step. I think the main thing is like in December as a teacher, it wasn't very busy with classes. Like I didn't have as many classes. I had, which makes sense. A lot of people for Christmas, I didn't have so many students. And then so in January and February, I wanted to kind of compensate for not having as many classes because I work hourly. So I was working a lot in order to compensate for that. And I think it was just like out in terms of like working a lot of hours. And then in my free time trying to make videos, but I felt like, oh, I'm not making enough videos. I'm not like doing anything like good enough. Like I felt like I was doing a lot of things, but I wasn't doing any part of that good enough. And so I think that like mentally was kind of my, I think mentally that was kind of my challenge. Yeah, I had a lot of classes with you on Christmas. But I think, for example, there are a lot of people that in January, February, I had a lot of people that needed training for like a job interview or something like that. And so in addition to the group classes, I was like scheduling in more people and trying to do that. And I think it was really good for me at that time because I needed to, like work, because there are times if you work freelance where you're not working as much and then times where you're working more. But I also think, I think it was more about also like my own way of dealing with that and feeling like yeah. But actually, right now, I'm not booked out. So if you see my schedule now, it's not as booked out. But yeah, I think January and February was really intense. Now I have some spots for March. So check my calendar and let me know if you want a spot. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's kind of the main thing. Also because I often prioritize more like my work over social life and other things. So I think that kind of caught up to me maybe. Flavor. Yeah, okay, I can say these words. Flavor, 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 flavor. It's like savor, flavor, flavor. Heart, heart. This is similar to part, the word part. Heart, flavor, heart. Concerned, concerned. It's like concerned, concerned. Really, that word is 2 syllables. The first syllable is very reduced. Kun, kun, kun. There's almost no vowel sound there. It's like a schwa. And then cerned is harder. So concerned. Also, yeah, you're very welcome. I have a tendency to. I would say I have a tendency to me is the more common one to say. For me, it sounds more natural. I have a tendency to. I have a tendency to take on a lot of projects. Yeah, personally, I would not use it with on. It has happened to me before, though, that I see in like British or Australian English or in another dialect, they use a different preposition. So I'm not going to say off the top of my head that that's not correct. But personally, I would always say I have a tendency to. The R in the American accent. So the R, for example, it's different. If you speak Spanish, the R, like the tongue touches. It touches. In English, in the US, sorry. In US English, the tongue does not touch. It's kind of in the middle of the mouth. It's similar to like the W, how your whole face is like ooh, but your mouth doesn't make ooh, it's So you have, if you're able to make the W face like ooh, go and keep the mouth like this. Roger Rabbit ran across the red railroad. That's not the original, but Roger Rabbit ran across the red railroad. It's different from any other R probably that you've ever had in your native languages. Don't touch the tongue. Make the face similar to a W. And yeah, just practice. It's almost like a growl. With more practice, you'll get it. It will just take time. And like looking at your face in the mirror, watching YouTube videos. I decided 4 is completely wrong, but I still use it. It still sounds so right. Honestly, that happens. Even I will sometimes hear native speakers incorrectly use prepositions. So I would not judge you guys for using the incorrect prepositions. And it happens to me as well. Like when I was in college and had to write a lot of essays, I would write the essay and then go back and read and see like, is this the best preposition or what makes more sense? Sometimes it takes more concentration and focus for us to decide what's the best preposition. I'm reading a book on or about. Ooh, that's a good question. I would say about is more common. On is used with when something's on a certain topic. I'm reading a book on the Second World War. You could also say about the Second World War. But if it's like the actual story, like I'm reading a book about a girl who falls into the ocean. You would not say I'm reading a book on a girl who falls into the ocean. So on is used only when it's a specific topic, like a field of study, a war, or a historical event, or something like that. About can be used in that way, or it could be used to talk about something that, like an event, like a girl that falls in love, or like it could be used to talk about a non-specific thing, if that makes sense, like a story instead of a historical event or like specific topic like that. So about would be more commonly used in multiple situations. It is International Book Day on March 23rd. But yeah, so thank you guys for joining me. Sorry again about the technical issues. I guess I will have to figure out what to do next time, since I can't flip my camera, but that's fine. Have a good International Women's Day and take care. I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye, everyone.